Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today I'm very excited to have Elizabeth Marsten with us. Elizabeth is the Senior Director of Strategic Marketplaces Services at Tinuiti, based out of Seattle, Washington, where she's building out program development, advertising, and sales support on retail media channels such as Walmart, Target, Instacart, Kroger, and Criteo Retail Media. Elizabeth, it's so great to have you on the show.
So great to be here. Thank you. I've been following you for a long time. I read the Art of SEO book, probably almost a decade ago now. It's been a while.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So back then it was the green cover with the hummingbird on it,
Yep.
and now it's orange with. It's only 1,000 pages. It keeps growing every edition.
Yep.
So yeah, if you need some good bedtime reading because you can't sleep, I highly recommend it. So what do you do these days if you're no longer learning and applying SEO? What are you up to? I mean, we got your bio, of course, but give us a little more of the journey, how you ended up going from working on SEO and agency stuff to doing what you do now.
Sure thing. So it's a long and kind of a twisty road, but I actually think in the end, ending up in retail media where I am today, and that's when you say marketplace strategic services, that's the long-winded way of a couple of years ago. We weren't quite sure what to call it, so I started out at Portent, which was a small digital or marketing firm back in like 2006. I thought it was called pay-per-click marketing. That's not what it's called. Learned that very quickly. Spent 8 years there learning about SEO, paid search, social, analytics, content for the web in particular, web design and development, you name it, we did it. And then from there, I went to Commerce Hub, which is a larger. It's a product. They have several different products, but specifically, if you want to go back to again that old school, I was in the department that was previously Mercent, which was acquired by Commerce Hub. So that's product feed management. So my purview was Google, Microsoft, and a lot of comparison shopping engine feeds. But we also had Amazon, Walmart, Jet at the time, eBay, and Newegg, Sears, all of those marketplaces. And so that's where I picked up a lot of the marketplace training. And then from there, went to Tinuiti, where I am the strategic marketplace services lead, which means I was placed from paid search. I changed over essentially into a marketplaces department, which was at the time is heavily Amazon, as you do. And then what I ended up doing was building out all the service lines for Walmart, for Instacart, for Target, Kroger, you name it, those sell side platforms like Criteo, Promote IQ, and Citrus Ad. And then continuing with every retailer under the sun after that, just depending on our book of business, demand, and where they're at.
Where do you see online retail heading in 2022?
So I still think it's still one of our biggest growth channels, and that's mostly I think because we went from 0 to 150 million% in this short 2-year period. So our growth is going to still look really good on online e-commerce and retail media, but it is still very in-store focused, and it's still very in-store transacted. And I think a lot of we tend to lose sight of that as marketers sometimes digitally. We're like, yeah, everything's going to be transacted online, but a lot of these things, especially like with grocery, right? It's you can put it in a box, but it's a very short-lived box. Like it has to get there in 30 minutes or an hour or whatever it is. So we're still very dependent on the brick and mortar stores, and I actually think that's a good thing for retail media because that is the biggest differentiator, right? So Amazon cannot nationally distribute, ice cream the same way that, like Kroger and Walmart can.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And where do you see the opportunities for smaller businesses to compete against Amazon? Are there opportunities, or is Amazon basically going to eat everybody's lunch?
Absolutely. So first, yeah, they're going to continue eating lunch next year, like all of our lunch. That is, we can't undo that. But there is definitely opportunity for smaller businesses with the proliferation of third-party marketplaces. So not just Amazon will have these third-party marketplaces. Walmart has one now. Target has Target Plus, very highly curated. Best Buy has been, Bed Bath & Beyond have been talking about theirs. Kroger has one now through, it's called Miracle. It's a third-party tool software that overlays their site. They have a whole ship-to-home service that's coming out. There is definitely space to play there for some of those smaller brands, particularly if they have a differentiating proposition, right? So if we think of like the food space, because that's where, we talk about the most, because that's the most amount of growth, and that's because it's the least amount of transacted online. When you talk about things like gluten-free types of foods or vegan or responsibly sourced or, made entirely from lentils, whatever it is, they have that differentiating proposition, which helps them stand out at a retailer, but also against some of the biggest CPG brands, in the world.
Yep. All right. And do you see newer or different strategies put in place by smaller companies when they're trying to, I don't know, compete with Amazon or even just play on the Amazon ecosystem? There seems like a strategy that's been employed amongst Amazon retailers is to try and figure out, kind of reverse engineer what the competition is targeting in terms of products and where they might source those products, just kind of R&D everything, rip off and duplicate. Have things evolved, or is that still just the name of the game on Amazon these days?
If you ask me today, it's the name of the game. But what we're planning for tomorrow, and what Amazon is planning for a lot tomorrow with their recent developments in brand pages and brand stores and live stream and other ways to showcase and show off a brand, they're definitely creating more opportunities for smaller players and mid to large size players to be in. From the R&D perspective, yeah, that's still very prevalent. In fact, we had a client just the other day that produced a hilarious marketing campaign that compares like the Amazon Basics version of their product, but making fun of it in a way that's like, look, we have all these, and these are and then they list out like their benefits, like why it's different. You can do this thing or you can do this thing, and this is why it costs a little bit more, but it is genuinely different, and they just embraced it head on. And unfortunately, that is just kind of how it is in terms of R&D. But again, they have these capabilities now on Amazon to capture brand pages, to capture brand voice, to create upper funnel awareness. There are different marketing types now. It just goes beyond sponsored products on Amazon.
Yeah. Well, speaking of sponsored products, is this something that pretty much anybody that has a product for sale on Amazon, even an author, should be learning about and playing in that space? Like, should I, with my Art of SEO book and several other books, be advertising on Amazon to get more people to buy the book and to rate and review?
Sure. So there will be different ad types, I think, that are available based on the product itself. So for example, if your book is a physical book, that's sitting in an FBA warehouse kind of thing, there's different options available probably to you than say like the one that's like printed on demand. But it also depends on what is the content that you can create to support that. And as long as there is a physical product, that goes in a box and can be rated and reviewed, and that you can do, pictures of and do that brand building, there's no reason you can't do some of the upper funnel advertising, like for example, Amazon's DSP, and take care of, different awareness or in-market segments, or even cross-target to competitor books.
So for our listener who's not familiar with Amazon DSP, could you explain that?
Amazon DSP, or demand side platform, right? So it's programmatic, but it's programmatic platform similar to the index exchange trade desk DV360 that they have built and is their proprietary program. But they most importantly have what they call Amazon O&O, or owned and operated. So that is on the Amazon site. That is on like the sites that they own, like IMDb, that you can be on those placements. They also do have third-party capabilities or networks that they partner with that you can choose separately. But from a performance standpoint, the Amazon O&O has been very impressive in terms of reaching folks that are in market, that are in category, that are able to then, and then they can close the loop so well because it's on an Amazon O&O. They bring them back to that Amazon product detail page where they can buy. So it's very convenient that way.
Yeah. So what do you see some of the some of the benefits, maybe some of the weaknesses or gaps, comparing Amazon advertising with Google advertising. Like, why would I want to be Amazon advertising? Why would I want to be Google advertising, or both, or neither, perhaps?
It always just depends on what you're doing, right? So for Google advertising, if you obviously have control of your supply chain fully, right? Because somehow that item has to be once advertised on Google, packed and shipped somewhere, usually in your warehouse or close to, or some sort of third-party fulfillment logistics center that you've worked out. When you do with Amazon, it's a whole different ballgame in terms of the logistics that have to happen before you even get to advertising. And so that's why I say it's really difficult to decide. It's not an either, it's or, it's an and in a lot of cases. So what I would always recommend is the assortment that you have on Amazon needs to be able to fulfill certain delivery requirements, right? So whether or not it's Prime eligible, is it, ship, is it Prime eligible because it's in an FBA warehouse? Are you a seller fulfilled Prime? Are you able to do it yourself? Being able to generate those reviews, and it's a very closed universe. So I always put Amazon in a separate box in that way, and then Google in a separate box in terms of you're driving usually to a D2C, right? You wouldn't drive to an Amazon product page necessarily. You could obviously drive to like a Facebook shop or a Shopify site, whatever it is. But the ability to close the loop in terms of conversion, that's why I say that it's an and not an or if, because you've got your Amazon universe. And usually I would also recommend that, per my earlier note on assortment, that you don't sell the exact same thing on Amazon that you do on your website, because then you start to run into conflicts between the two, because Amazon does go and look and see, are you selling it for less somewhere else, and they don't like that. So it is better to have unique assortments between the two. And honestly, what you have on Amazon should be more of your bestseller kind of things that move fast, so they don't take up storage inventory and cost you, since they do charge like by the foot. Whereas with Google, ideally, it's D2C, those are sunk costs in a sense, like your own warehouse or your garage, wherever it might be.
Got it. Okay. Let's talk a bit about programmatic ad campaigns. Assuming our listener doesn't know much about programmatic, what would you walk them through so that they understand the benefits and opportunities?
So I would say welcome, because I also like programmatic. Recovering paid search person, or evolving paid search person, however you want to say it. Programmatic was the field that I worked in the least, but as retail media is evolving, what they're finding, and especially with the privacy concerns that are happening around cookies, right? So now we're taking cookies away. Now first party data is king, walled gardens, all that kind of jargon. But when it comes to programmatic, the number one thing to understand is the difference between going out on the open exchange. So whether or not you are using a platform like Trade Desk, like DV360, which is Google's, Index Exchange, Yahoo, still in there. That's the one thing I've heard Yahoo most recently about, is in the programmatic universe. There's a lot of exchanges out there, but really what you do is you go into their platform and you're buying audiences, and you're buying these audiences usually at a CPM, and then you're also paying a percentage to the platform for fees. It is probably the most black box feeling of, I'd say, the digital marketing channels these days. There are some that are seeking to kind of bring more visibility to that and how it breaks down. Amazon actually does a pretty good job of that. Criteo is doing a good job of that. I think we're going to see it more, especially as we go into retail media. And for example, when we say, programmatic, Walmart just launched their own DSP via the Trade Desk. So they partner with the Trade Desk, and the Trade Desk built a specific instance of their platform for Walmart's first party data. So in the future, say January, I'll be able to log into the Trade Desk's platform and be able to, and once Walmart enables me or the brand to be able to access the data, I will be able to then create campaigns that uses Walmart's first party data out on the open web in the exchange with the Trade Desk. It's really cool.
Awesome.
A lot of paperwork, but really cool.
Yeah. Do you see Walmart actually competing effectively with Amazon, or is that horse has already won the race?
Yes and no. It's one of those things that, again, with like the Amazon Google comparison, when I think about Amazon and Walmart, are they the same? Yes and no. Because when we think about e-commerce and we think about advertising dollars, Amazon and Google and Facebook are the winners by far. Like there's a huge gap. It's years in the making to be able to overtake that. But then the question is, do they, could they, or should they be able to overtake them? It's like, because they're not the same. And, Walmart is a $600 billion retailer, worldwide. Physical store locations in the United States is 4,800. It's almost 5,000 stores. That reach is insane. So should you be looking at Walmart the same as against, say, Amazon? And I would argue at this point, no, they're just not the same. Can you generate value and volume from them both? Absolutely. They certainly have it, right? Whether or not Amazon's online presence is always going to be bigger in that sense, and Walmart's offline presence should always be bigger in that sense, at least for the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm. And do you have an example of a really nimble, clever online retailer who's done well with both Amazon and with Walmart? And I would try and find as small of an example as possible. Like the smaller the business, the better, because you're probably not talking to an executive at $1 billion company right now.
No. So what I would say is it tends to be very category specific, right? So smaller brands that have, like I was talking about earlier, about a specific brand recognition, like reason to be. Why do you exist? Because you are the only dry pasta that is made, entirely from lentils and has 0 sugar, whatever it is, right? You have your reason to be. And so when it comes to being at an Amazon and a Walmart, really all you have to do from there is, you've got your assortment, where it is, you've got your fulfillment, so you can take pages out of both those books very easily. And then from there, from an advertising perspective, it's a matter of, it is literally a matter of just signing up and going to. And it is a matter also of knowing where your audience is, right? So in the example of the lentil pasta, the question is at Walmart, how many customers know or seek out lentil-based pasta versus say on Amazon, right? So demographically speaking, probably not that many. So maybe your content on Walmart or the way that you seek reviews is going to be more awareness generated and like the benefits of and educational than say on Amazon, where it might be more, because you can target in market audiences, more conversion focused.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Very doable. I just would never do the same approach for both.
Yeah. Okay. So for our listener who's not, let's say, doing a product shopping feed approach, they're just maybe doing organic and perhaps dabbling with some paid search. How would they get started with a comparison shopping opportunity there?
So usually comparison shopping, and I'm a little bit rusty on it, but they're still out there, and it is product feed based. I do recommend if you're going to do multi-channel, so you're going to do Amazon, you're going to do Walmart, you're going to do eBay, you're going to do Connexity or whatever it is, that you do start to look at that product catalog software, like a Feedonomics, like or Go Data Feed, those kinds of platforms. You might also look to see if your website has it built in a sense. So a lot of Shopify, WooCommerce, and BigCommerce have plugins or capabilities to help you just connect those. So like, for example, BigCommerce, I know because I've seen it. We've talked about it. They're a partner. You can enable the Walmart app and then become a third-party seller via Walmart and go through their platform to apply for and be. But if you're only doing like D2C, you don't need that functionality. You don't have to turn it on. It's there if you need it. But from an organic standpoint, also those platforms tend to be pretty, and you can argue with me here. They tend to see, I think they're pretty solid as far as like their SEO and their content capabilities. And if that's the case, obviously that's where you spend a fair amount of your time. And then you can reuse that content to build those product pages via feed, either manually or through like your BigCommerce or Shopify site.
Right. And would you advise that somebody get an agency to help them with this process, or do you think it's straightforward enough they could do
it on their own?
Okay. Do you have any?
Yeah, I think so.
examples?
I mean, if your catalog is less than, if your catalog is less than 20, usually you can do it, right? So you can use for like a Walmart or there's a spec sheet. You could just download it. You can enter in manually the different products. Now it can be a pain in the ass over time if you want to continually update it. The only time that I would recommend if you have less than 20 products and software is if you have a lot of volatility in your inventory. So something goes in and out, or you need to have buffer stock put in there, and maybe your cart doesn't enable that, or you need to be able to send inventory updates to Walmart or eBay, whoever it is, more than once a day or more than once a week. You might want to look into that.
Gotcha. Do you have an example of a nice win that company that wasn't doing the shopping based feeds, and then they started it and got lots of additional revenue?
I would say there's a blog called Marketplace Pulse, which is a really good one to watch for like across all of these marketplace channels, but one in particular, I want to say about 3 years ago, and you can still find it today, and I think you can see where eBay went with it, is Adidas. They started selling on eBay, and that is an article on Marketplace Plus. You can see that, and I think if you look at eBay's just commercials that they have today. I mean, there's a commercial today that is focused just on sneakers, and it has become very clear as a category that eBay is a strength there. And so if we did see them set up that shop, turn it on, turn it up, and it's going great.
Cool. Excellent. And back to Amazon for a few minutes. Like, what's the implication of not being in the buy box, and how does one get to be the featured retailer in the buy box?
So implication of the buy box is if you're not in it, and so if you're not familiar, the buy box is that yellow button that says add to cart underneath the price on a product detail page. Basically, if you're not winning the buy box, you don't exist, right? So I think it's like 95% of people click that button rather than go to that little tiny link underneath there that says, also these other sellers. Usually it's on a little bit more obscure items that maybe there's not a lot of inventory of, like collectibles and such, that you would seek that out. But for the buy box, you just got to be in there. And there's a lot of small factors that go into it, but the biggest factors are always around price, right? So Amazon, you're always going to get the best price. Sales velocity. So how often are folks buying that? So if it's popular, they're going to continue to bring that item up because that's what people want. It's very similar to Google's search results in that way. Think of it as like your bounce rate. If people come to that page and then they leave, God forbid, click the other seller's link. That probably feeds the algorithm a negative signal. And as well as fulfillment methodology. So that's a big one as well. So if it is like, say, in an FBA warehouse somewhere and it's Prime eligible, if the user in particular has added filters on it all, like they only want Prime or they only want a certain price point, those can all play into as well.
Right. So FBA, for those who aren't familiar, is fulfillment by Amazon. And that means that you're shipping your product to an Amazon warehouse. They're holding on to that inventory and they're charging you. And then they take a percentage when the product sells on Amazon.
Yep. So it can add, those little fees add up really fast. So that storage fee, and that's what I was talking about earlier about product velocity, things that you want to have on Amazon or things that are going to move, because paying to store at Amazon is not a good business move.
Right. And being Prime eligible isn't necessarily a given. What does it take to be Prime eligible so that if somebody has Amazon Prime, they don't have to pay for shipping when they order your product?
So a lot of it has to do with, so if it's usually, if it's in an FBA warehouse, it's usually Prime eligible. That's kind of one of the biggest selling points of doing that program. Otherwise, you can do something like Seller Fulfilled Prime, where you qualify, and there are several things that you have to do to show Amazon that you can qualify to hit those performance metrics consistently over time. And the biggest one, obviously, is gets the item out the door and to the customer in the 2-day window, that 2-day Prime window. I mean, that's it. In a nutshell, that's it. They do have obviously other things that you have to do in terms of like paperwork and to prove that out and over a certain amount of time. But those that get it, it's it's tough to continue to execute on and maintain.
Mm-hmm. Do you know anybody who's lost their prime eligibility status?
Probably, I can't name any off the top of my head, but I've seen my share of horror stories of either losing the prime badge or I've seen the best worst horror stories are more around like an account getting hacked and the payment the bank getting changed, right? So that the Amazon payments are no longer going to that seller's account, but going to some. So I'd say like the best worst horror stories are less around losing prime status and more around things like where you get taken down completely, right? So if the seller loses the listing or is suspended entirely, that can take weeks to resolve. In fact, there's a new practice of law starting to pop up where there are these lawyers or consultants that used to work at Amazon that all they do is work on cases to get sellers reinstated. Those are the things that keep you up at night more than losing a prime badge. Honestly, if on a scale of worst to worstest, I guess that's not even a word, but.
Right. And where would you put having, let's say, your Facebook ads account banned? Would that be even worse than losing your status on Amazon, or would you put
I think it'd be
Amazon
worse
higher?
than losing your status. Anything where you're dark, right? So, and I would clarify the difference between Amazon seller account and Amazon advertising, right? So if you're down as a seller account, you're not selling at all. That is like the worst of the worst. And then I would put close above that, the Facebook advertising and then the Amazon advertising, because you can't. Facebook, and it's interesting is Facebook and Amazon advertising are very similar in terms of like how they fuel a flywheel, right? So like you can have a Facebook page and you can have Facebook shop and all that kind of stuff, but if you build it, no one comes. In either instance, you have to buy. They've made it so you have to buy advertising almost just to get it going. New products, new stores, whatever it is.
Right. Now, you used the word flywheel, and I know there's an approach or some sort of methodology. Forget who teaches it about the flywheel, but yeah, could you elaborate a bit more on this flywheel?
Sure, it's funny is so Tinuiti, we have the flywheel too. We call it the forever flywheel. So it's a little bit different, but it takes a page out of that instance. So in Amazon's case, their flywheel is more about how do they get customers to keep coming back and back and back and back and buying, right? It's similar when you think about Google and their searches, right? How do you get the user to come back and search again and search again and search again? And it has to do with being able to provide the customer with what they're looking for at a great price and fast, and then do it again, right? Is it what I'm looking for? Is it a price I'm willing to pay? What here's what I'm looking for. How much is it? When can I have it? Repeat, rinse and repeat, and that leads to good customer experience, and a good customer experience will always get you to come back. So same with like Google's, search quality, right? What's the thing I'm looking for? Oh, there it is. I have my answer. All right, next.
Yeah.
And then Tinuiti's is more around like talent retention and client results. So like we have it kind of all spoked out that way, and then client results, client feedback, employee happiness, and then growth, right? And then reinvest it back in technology and people like me who work with things we call strategic marketplaces that end up being retail media.
Yeah. I remember where I first heard about the flywheel. It was from the book Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yeah.
Yeah, the flywheel effect.
Oh yes, we're all in.
Yes. Awesome. And what did I not ask you that I really needed to?
I'm not really needed to, other than I would say retail media. So it's kind of interesting is how I ended up here versus where I'm going to go. I need more people to come with me. I need more folks because when I think about who does this work or who's qualified to do this kind of work with the retailers and understand the nuances there, it's paid search folks first and foremost. It's marketplace folks, advertising folks. These are my people that understand CPC models and attribution windows and those nuances, but also that sometimes we just don't know. Sometimes Google rolls out an update or adds a new ad type or changes how everything's going to be accounted for, and you just kind of go, yep, that's our new reality today. Okay. So being able to roll with it is definitely a skill set to have.
Yeah. And who do you look up to, or do you see as a role model in that regard of being able to adapt and pivot and grow and evolve?
So I'm a big fan overall of a lot of these like emerging brands. It's less about a people and more about like I'm watching like entire organizations move and adapt. I'm a big fan right now of a lot. I listen a lot to Pivot. So listening to Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway talk about like the market overall, and I think about like what that means to me. Love the Remarkable Retail podcast with Steve Dennis and Matt LeBlanc. They're old school retail, but now looking at it from a digital focus. So they're literally they are where I'm going.
Awesome. And do you have any favorite tools or resources other than what we've discussed already?
Obviously, I'm a big fan of Tinuiti's tool set. So we are API partners. So we are working. So Mobius X, I get to work with the retailers directly on what that looks like and how we're gonna attack that. And I'm a big fan right now of a lot of share of voice platforms. So your Data Hawks and your Helium 10s that kind of give you an idea, at least digitally, what the digital shelf looks like. So you can get an idea from a category perspective of what you're in for.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Do you have a favorite book?
Actually, it's not really a marketing book, or
could be anything.
I was gonna say if it's a regular book, The Count of Monte Cristo has been always my favorite forever and ever. But from a marketing perspective, probably a biggest fan of like Persuasion with Robert Cialdini. I never can say it right.
Cialdini. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, he goes by Bob if you're friends with him.
No, unfortunately not.
Yeah, he's
but I did enjoy the book.
Yeah, he's been on this podcast. Awesome. And how does our listener get in touch, follow you, learn from you, work with you, all that?
Awesome. So I'm on Twitter, EB Kendo, which Kendo, which is a Japanese martial art. Or if you can't remember that, my name is pretty easy. I am on LinkedIn, and I do respond as fast as I can. I do keep that open pretty much all day. I would say those are the two best. I also have a column now on Adweek where I write about retail media about once a month. So if you're interested in hearing more about retail media itself, that's a good place to start. I just did a post on 2022 predictions for what's going to happen in retail media.
Oh, awesome. I'll include that in the show notes for this episode.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you, listener. We'll catch you in the next episode of Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.